Well, it's been another very busy week. Lots of activity, provoking lots of questions and comments. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions and comments. I want to let you know I read all of them. And today I've combined a number of questions into two. So here we go. And by the way, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization, and this is your daily video update for January 31st, 2025. The first group of questions pertain to the confirmation hearings held in the U.S. Senate committees yesterday on the nominations of Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence and Kash Patel to be Director of the FBI. Now, the questions are about what went on, if they're confirmed, how do we know they'll stick to the program, the intent? So let me start from the top. There are two basic takeaways that I have from what happened yesterday. First, that Gabbard and Patel seem very committed to the missions assigned to them by President Trump, namely to clean up the rot in the intelligence committees and in the law enforcement community, in this case in the FBI, and secondly, to defend the citizens of the United States and the Constitution and the constitutional protections for the citizens. And both of them, in my opinion, seem up to the task. They handled a lot of hostile questions which essentially showed the brain-dead acceptance of most of the Senate, including Republicans, of the narratives that have been put out by the globalists and the military-industrial financial complex. For example, Gabbard is accused of having the wrong opinions, that is, the opposite opinions of the intelligence community, for example, on Syria. And what she pointed out is that the reason she met with Assad and the reason she raised questions about Syria was that she doesn't believe we should go to war, send American soldiers into war, risking their lives, risking huge amounts of money, based on false intelligence. And for this, she uses the example of the Iraq War, which is unmistakable that we were lied into that war by our leaders. And it was extremely costly and devastating, not just for the United States, but for the after effects, for what was done to Iraq and the creation of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and so on. But it also carries over into Syria. Gabbard said she was opposed to the idea of the United States backing the so-called moderate rebels, which would have put the United States possibly into a war in Syria against Russia, as Hillary Clinton was advocating. And instead, she said that it's a mistake for us to treat Islamic terrorists as though they're moderate rebels. Well, it turns out she was right. Look who's now sitting in Damascus in charge of Syria. At the present, it's a man who was on a list that the United States issued a bounty of $10 million for his capture. So Gabbard essentially was right in questioning the lockstep opinions that were coming through the establishment of the leadership of the intelligence communities. Now, isn't that what you want and expect from someone who's in charge of intelligence? Instead of going along the way the whole community did in support of the lies that led to the Iraq War, suppose you had a DNI who said, I don't buy this, I don't accept it, we need more evidence before we go in. Well, that's exactly what Gabbard says she's going to do. And this apparently irritates some of the knuckleheads on the committee. Now, similarly was the whole question of Snowden. She was asked to denounce Snowden as a traitor. Now remember, Edward Snowden is the person who, after attempts to expose the mass data collection that was being done by the National Security Agency after the 9/11 laws, for which basically paved the way for that data collection, when he couldn't get anyone to respond to it, he released some files and left the country. Now, Gabbard was asked, will you denounce him as a traitor? And she wouldn't do that. What she said is that he broke the law. But then she added that as DNI, she would make sure that the law accounts for the possibility for people who are whistleblowers to be protected and to present the evidence of the charges they're making, instead of being forced to flee the country and flee prosecution. Now then, what she said is that you must recognize that what he exposed was a violation of the U.S. Constitution and the law, and that one of her predecessors, James Clapper, lied to the Congress when he denied that there was mass data collection going on. So essentially, she was asked to side with the liars against Snowden, and by implication, accept the idea that you need to have mass data collection, which means every email, every phone call, every credit card usage has to go through a process of being vetted in order to protect the country. And she said she doesn't believe that. So I think on her part, she stood up very well. It's clear that some of them are totally hysterical, especially the Democrats. Mark Warner from Virginia, was beside himself about Gabbard's refusal to denounce Snowden, as were several others. Now, on Kash Patel, I think the most important question was the one that really wasn't posed, which is Russiagate. Patel made his name working for Representative Devin Nunes on the Intelligence Committee, digging into the corruption of the FBI in particular, with FISA warrants and so on, to justify not just spying on the Trump campaign, but opposing Trump every step of the way and making his life miserable. Patel stood up for that and said that he believed it was right. And as he pointed out, it's been confirmed that the charges of Russian spying have been completely discredited, but not in the minds of many of the Democrats. So it remains unclear what will happen when the Senate committee votes, or the two committees vote. If all the Democrats vote against the two nominees and any of the Republicans join them, then it will be passed on to the full Senate without an approval, which makes it doubtful that they'll pass. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think both of them presented strong, legitimate arguments for their nominations and confirmations. But it's now up to you. We've got to bombard the Senate with demands that they be confirmed. Now, the second question comes from Robert and a number of others. What do you make of the discussion of cryptocurrencies, central bank digital currencies, and so on? Well, I'm still studying the issue. I'm not completely convinced on anything yet, but I think it's important because it keeps coming up. And what I've tried to do is distinguish between three categories of digital currencies. One, the use of digital currencies for settlement in international trade, which is already going on. It's inevitable, and it addresses the problem of floating exchange rates and the petrodollar system and so on. Now that in itself is not part of the whole banking system, and certainly not personal banking and savings. Now, the second question of that, the central bank digital currencies, I think is a potential problem because it's handing more power to a technocratic Great Reset to control every aspect of finance, including personal finance, to essentially put you in a file where they have access to everything you do and say. And that's part of the Great Reset of a global banker's dictatorship. Now, the third question is digital currencies such as Bitcoin as an instrument for personal wealth through speculation. This is a problem. And it's a problem because what it would define is it enshrines, I should say, the separation between physical economy and personal wealth accumulation. And one of the big problems we have is that you can have people make huge profits from trading financial instruments that have nothing to do with the underlying physical economy. And that's the cause of inflation. That's the cause of deficits. That's the cause of high interest rates when they go to quantitative tightening and so on. And so the idea that you have a separation between the potential for individuals to make super profits through speculation versus a credit system which develops the physical economy of a nation, which benefits everyone, that's what has to be discussed. And I'm concerned that there are people who are looking to digital currencies, cryptocurrency, and so on, as a way to make a profit, to take care of themselves in a way that actually keeps the power of credit and finance in the hands of private interests. The whole purpose of a national credit system is to make sure that there's access to credit for entrepreneurs, for industrialists, for inventors, for the investment in the future. This is what Hamilton proposed with his infrastructure plans and his Society for Useful Manufacturers and so on. This is what built the nation, not a plan for individual personal wealth based on Ponzi schemes. And so I think that we have to be very careful in the direction this is heading. Now that's why I say I'm not sure yet. I intend to do more research, and some of my colleagues, such as Jason Ross, are looking into this, and we'll probably have something more to say in the future. But what's needed, to just reiterate, are the 4 laws of LaRouche. Separation of investment banking from commercial banking, a credit system for generating credit for physical economy, massive potential for infrastructure development, which actually increases the productivity of the whole economy, and funding for the frontiers of science and technology such as fusion research and space research. Those 4 laws represent LaRouche's contribution to understanding the difference between a physical economy and a speculative economy that benefits only the handfuls of the billionaires and the few who can afford to engage in it. So those are my questions I'm answering today. Today at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, there'll be the weekly Zoom call of the International Peace Coalition, and there's a link to that in the description section. I hope many of you will choose to join us there.